Hey everyone, have you ever written a Python script, you run it, it does its thing, and then the second it's finished, all your hard-earned results just vanish? It's frustrating, right? Well, in this explainer, we're going to fix that. We're going to dive into a really core programming concept called serialization, which is all about making your data stick around. Let's get into it. Really think about it for a second. Your script is buzzing along, creating objects, crunching numbers, maybe fetching data from the web. But the moment that program stops running, poof, it's all gone. Every single bit of it just evaporates from your computer's memory. So what's the deal? How do you actually save that stuff for later? Well, that right there is the core problem we're going to tackle. See, everything your program creates, all those variables, all those objects, the entire state of your application, it all lives in this super temporary space we call memory. Now, don't get me wrong, memory is amazing. It's incredibly fast, super efficient, but it's also got a terrible, memory. The second your program closes, that memory is wiped clean, ready for the next task. So how do we get around this? How do we make our data persistent? The answer is a really cool process called serialization. You can think of it as the magic trick that lets us take a perfect snapshot of our data, the whole state of our program, frozen in time, and save it somewhere permanent. And honestly, the core idea is surprisingly simple. My favorite analogy is to think of it like a recipe. Okay, so you've just baked this amazing, delicious cake. That's your object, living in memory. Serialization is the act of meticulously writing down that exact recipe, step by step, ingredient by ingredient. That piece of paper, which is basically just a series of bytes, can now be tucked away in a file or even mailed to a friend.
So yeah, the whole flow is super straightforward. You start with your live running object in memory, then you serialize it down into that stream of bytes. That's our recipe. And from there, you can do whatever you want with it. Store those bytes in a file, shoot them across a network, you name it. But of course, what good is a recipe if you can't bake the cake again, right? That's where deserialization comes into play. It is the exact reverse process. You take that series of bytes, our recipe, from a file, and you use it to perfectly recreate the original object, the original cake, right back in memory, ready to go. Okay, awesome. So we get the concept, right? Save the recipe, recreate the cake later, but how do we actually do this in Python? Well, in the Python world, there are two main tools you're going to reach for, and each has its own set of pros and cons. We're talking about Pickle and JSON.
All right, so this is the big question. When do you pick one and when do you pick the other? Let's break it down. So this table really lays it all out. On one side, you've got Pickle. Think of Pickle as the Python powerhouse. It's a beast. It can serialize pretty much any Python object you can imagine, which is just incredibly powerful. The catch? It creates this binary format that only other Python programs can understand. And if you try to open it, well, it's just gibberish to us humans. Then you've got JSON. JSON is like the universal translator of data. It's a simple, clean, text-based format that's super easy for you to read and for practically any other programming language to understand. Now, it's not as powerful. It really only handles the basics like strings, numbers, and lists, but that simplicity, that's its superpower. Okay, hang on, let's pause right here because this next part is absolutely critical. The very thing that makes Pickle so powerful is also what makes it potentially dangerous. Because it can reconstruct complex Python objects, a bad actor could create a malicious pickle file. And when you go to deserialize it, when you unpickle it, that file could execute nasty code on your machine. The official Python docs could not be clearer about this. You should only ever unpickle data that comes from a source you 100% trust. Seriously. And it's really because of that security concern, plus its amazing portability, that JSON has become the undisputed king of the web. I mean it. Anytime you have two different applications talking to each other over the internet, I'd bet you dollars to donuts they are speaking JSON. You're going to hear the term RESTful API thrown around all the time in this space. Don't let it intimidate you. Just think of it as a set of rules, a standard way for web services to talk. Your script, the client, makes a request to a server asking for some information, and the server sends back a representation of that info. And guess what format it almost always uses? You got it, JSON. All right, that's enough theory for one day. Let's actually see this stuff in action. We're going to take all these concepts and put them to work by building a cool little command line weather app. It's simple. We'll hit a real weather API, get back some real JSON data, and then display it right in our terminal. And the cool thing is, there are tons of these services out there that are just waiting for you to use them. You've got companies like OpenWeather, WeatherStack. They all have these amazing APIs that give you access to just a treasure trove of weather data. And the best part? Most of them have really generous free plans so you can start tinkering right away. Yeah, just to give you an idea, OpenWeather lets you make 1,000 API calls every single day for free. That is more than enough to build and test all kinds of fun and interesting apps. This isn't just theory, this is real-world data you can start playing with like right now. So, okay, we build our app, we make the API call, we parse the JSON that comes back, and we print the results. And hey, it works. We get the temperature, the humidity, all the data's there. But let's be real for a second. It looks kind of meh. You know, it's just a wall of plain text on a black screen. It's functional for sure, but it's not exactly inspiring, is it? But what if we could do better? What if we could take that same data and make it look, well, beautiful? We can. We can totally elevate our little command line app with an absolutely fantastic library called Rich. Rich is a true game changer for anyone working in the terminal. It's a Python library that lets you just blow past the limitations of plain text. We're talking colors, beautifully formatted tables, progress bars, styled text, even Markdown, all right there in your terminal. It's amazing. And just look at the difference it makes. With just a few extra lines of code, our weather app transforms from that boring block of text into this beautifully formatted, easy-to-read display with colors, icons, and clear organization. It is the exact same data, but the presentation makes it 1,000 times more professional and honestly, 1,000 times more useful. All right, so let's quickly recap the big ideas from all this. First up, serialization. That's our magic trick for making temporary data permanent. Next, JSON. When you're talking to web APIs, JSON is the language everyone speaks. It's the human-readable standard. Then there's Pickle. It's super powerful for Python-only stuff, but you have to remember that big security warning. And finally, don't forget that presentation really matters. A great library like Rich can make your applications shine and feel so much more professional. So now you have the tools. You know how to grab data from pretty much anywhere on the web using APIs. You know how to save it and make it stick around with serialization. And you even know how to present it in a way that looks absolutely fantastic. The tools are literally at your fingertips. So the only real question left is, what are you going to build?